Uptick of cyclone activity in the Indian Ocean as well as elsewhere on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 29. So around the world we've got 3 active cyclones now, a depression that we've marked off the west coast of India, and the formation of Tropical Storm Rina in the Atlantic, which occurred I think yesterday evening. 61 storms now have formed so far this year. We're code blue for mainly the Eastern Hemisphere. Day 121 of Atlantic hurricane season, and like we've mentioned, we've got those 2 tropical storms in very close proximity to each other, and still a very uncertain forecast for both of them as well. It looks like Philippe will be the dominant system in the end, but how strong it gets is still a big question mark. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got a 10% area of interest now that we've marked in the far eastern reaches of the basin, and that could develop later on, and it's starting to get some stronger signals in a later period now, so that's something that we may want to watch over the next few days. And in the Western Pacific, we've got 2 areas of interest now. 80% chance for a system in the Philippine Sea. Looks like it's going to form now, a broad system. And to the east, we had 2 there yesterday, but now it looks like there is going to be just 1 20% chance on that. 50% that we're giving for the Bay of Bengal, a system that's developing there right now, could develop into a tropical cyclone, and one that has formed rather surprisingly in the last 24 hours, really quickly, into a tropical depression just off the west coast of India there, and is likely to move inland in a couple of days, but along the coast it could cause some heavy rainfall. Well, here's Philippe's current position. You can just about make out the Lesser Antilles now on the far left-hand side of the screen. It's getting closer, but very slowly. 676 kilometers from Guadeloupe, 710 from Barbuda, 712 from Antigua, 766 from Montserrat, and 846 from St. Martin. It is still moving very slowly westwards. Its centre is becoming more exposed, as we'll see on satellite imagery shortly, and so wind shear is still having its merry way with this storm. Rina, it's a similar story, and this is only just a little bit further east. It's 1,580 kilometers from Guadeloupe, 1,605 from Barbuda, 2,055 from San Juan, 2,351 from Bermuda, and 3,525 from Miami. It's probably going to shoot off northwards of Philippe and then continue to move towards the west-northwest generally, but it's probably not going to last very long, and National Hurricane Center have it dead or as a depression, an ailing depression, by the end of the 5-day period. So let's check the satellite imagery then. This is Philippe first of all, and you'll notice probably more than anything that center is just starting to escape towards the west there as we watch that imagery, and wind shear is still really dominant on this storm right now. It's struggling under its influence there, but the storm's still holding on to probably 40 mile per hour winds. It's fairly weak, and obviously those strongest winds will be on the eastern side and southeastern side. If it does stall a lot, then that means it could produce lots of rain over the waters around it, but obviously no land areas implicated. There's Rina, still partially exposed as well, but looking a little bit better, certainly in terms of the amount of convection it's producing. So Rina not looking too bad, and we're giving that 50 miles per hour at this point, although it looks like the cloud tops may be just tapering off a little bit in the late part of that imagery. Well, here's a quick look at that Indian system, and you can see it there, got some very decent spiraling and circulation depicted by ASCAT, which also got 30 knot winds, so that's enough really to give it tropical depression status, and it's just hugging the coast right now, and it looks like it might do that for a couple of days before it finally moves in. And this is the Western Pacific system, Invest 92 I think it is, and there it is with some big blow-ups of cloud tops on the western side of that centre, and it's still got a little way to go. Wind shear on the right hand side by the looks of things, so it's got a little while before it forms, but it looks like it will now. Sea surface temperatures still very warm in the eastern Pacific, ahead of that other area that we're looking at now, really warm waters. The Atlantic also looking very good still at large areas there, big line from the southern Gulf of Mexico straight through the Caribbean into the western part of the main development region. And if Philippe does move south a little bit, as what could happen, then it will get warmer sea surface temperatures and could make a case for strengthening. Western Pacific, a massive hot spot there in the Philippine Sea right now, which this system will take advantage of, no doubt. Nearly 32 degrees Celsius there for a wide area east of the Philippines, and further northwards those temperatures still looking good all the way up to Japan, not quite reaching South Korea anymore though. The Bay of Bengal, very warm there off the coast of India and Bangladesh, so that system that's moving in, and that western coast of India storm around 28 degrees Celsius, that's pretty decent still. And the southwest Indian Ocean starting to get warmer there as well. Of course, the season is on its way fairly soon, and the Australian region, a similar story. Gulf of Carpentaria really filling up now with temperatures above 26 degrees Celsius. That's of course the general break point where we usually see tropical cyclones. And the South Pacific there as well, starting to encroach a little bit further south once again. This is the sea surface temperature anomalies. The Indian Ocean generally above average, but a noticeable cool spot near Indonesia. The Western Pacific is mostly above average, especially in the deep tropics. The Eastern Pacific is slowly getting rid of that cold spot near Hawaii and very warm in the Far East. In the Atlantic, it's the Western Gulf that's the hot spot there, and also for large parts of the main development region, and a little bit cooler up the Gulf Stream now, but still generally doing good. Oceanic heat content extremely high, lots and lots of energy still in the Caribbean Sea. You can't rule out one or two late season giants that could occur there. In the Eastern Pacific, there's still a sizable area there as well up the Gulf of California, which is going to be important for this upcoming model run, because that's what they're saying. And the Western Pacific, one or two big spots there as well off the coast of the Philippines, which is pretty normal. So this is the GFS computer model over the next 5 days, and you can see both of these systems, Philippe on the south side, Rina on the north side there, Rina dying off quite quickly, and Philippe becoming a massive, powerful hurricane according to the GFS. It's been maintaining that for quite a while. National Hurricane Center aren't sold, they're still only calling for a tropical storm peak, so it's going to be a really interesting interaction here to see what exactly happens with that. Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for that potential formation of the next storm, and it eventually starts to appear on the GFS model and all of the others. So it is long range, but I think chances after 5 days are looking pretty decent for this, and we could well see our next storm forming down the track next week, or next weekend even. But you can see it there towards the end of that 5-day period, becoming a tropical storm and starting to get a little bit more momentum. There's the Western Pacific, that first system, a very broad one in the Philippine Sea, starts to get tropical storm force winds on the 1st of October, that's Sunday, and then continuing northwest and then turning a little bit westwards later on towards the Batanes Islands of the Philippines, which have been hit by a lot of stuff this year so far. And you can also see the other system that's moving through the eastern Micronesian islands, and it struggles throughout the whole period there, and that's why it's still only at 20%. Indian Ocean, look at these two systems right now, blink and you'll miss them. The first one there off the west coast of India, there's the other one hugging the coast of West Bengal, and they both move inland quite quickly before the start of next week. And then the second one there looks like it might regenerate a little bit inland, or perhaps a little bit more influence from another system just behind it, and that produces some strong winds, and what we're looking at probably some very high rainfall amounts as well over the Ganges River area. That whole region looks like they could get a lot of rain next week. Meantime though, looking at the Philippines and this potential system that's on its way, moving towards the west-northwest, and it could be striking those islands, the very northern extremities, and enhancing the rainfall further south once again on Mindoro and Palawan. But you can see here during the next 7 days we're expecting rainfall amounts of up to 10 inches over the northern part of Luzon, but potentially up to 31 inches out there over the Taiwan Strait, the Luzon Strait, towards those islands. Extremely high rainfall amounts, 31 inches, that's nearly 800 millimeters actually, and around 250 millimeters on Luzon, and a little bit higher than that, getting towards 300 millimeters forecasted there for parts of Mindoro and the northernmost islands of Palawan. this is still quite speculative, and that forecast may change. In the longer range, we have that strong Philippe moving off towards the northeast, and maybe a little something in the western Atlantic there might be the remnants of Rina, and then Philippe curving round towards the east, then southeast, and then starting to curve towards the northeast again and affecting the Azores potentially as a hurricane there before the end of day 10. Now again, this could all be out the window if the models got it wrong. National Hurricane Center once again only calling for a tropical storm peak in the next 5 days, which would obviously reduce the storm's intensity on that forecast considerably. Eastern Pacific, take a look at this system that starts to form in the day 5 to 10 period, and look at that rapid intensification, major hurricane and powerful impacts for the southern part of Baja California Sur, Cabo San Lucas, and up into the western coast of Mexico. I think that's Nayarit there, as a very powerful storm. You often see things like this in October, and there it is, potentially a category 4 there depicted, but it is quite long range. And here's that Western Pacific system really developing there, actually a major typhoon briefly as it moves through that channel once again. And I say once again because a few other storms have done that so far, and then just moving south of Hong Kong and towards the southwest eventually and dying off. That second system finally forms in the very long range here, or well, day 7 or 8, maybe 9, and becomes a significant storm as well, northwestwards typhoon there just off the Northern Mariana Islands. Well, that was a bit of a crazy period there, but you can take a look at the Force 13 merch store, scan the barcode, and it will take you straight there. And we also have our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts, which ironically wasn't depicted in any of those models. Everything else was, though. In the silly range then, and this is quite silly, this is what happens with Philippe moving off towards the southeast. Another system forms in the Caribbean Sea, and another one pops up off the east coast of Florida. But look at Philippe there moving southeastwards and then turning back northwestwards again, doing a very crazy track on that forecast there, and will be giving the Azores a migraine probably. But looking at the Caribbean there, a system that forms as well off the coast of Colombia actually, and Venezuela, and then moving off towards the north eventually, and then that other system off the coast of Florida moving through there. That's extremely long range though, I wouldn't read anything into that yet. A second system in the Eastern Pacific in that super long range period as well, becoming a hurricane, maybe giving some tropical storm force winds to parts of Mexico, but generally moving away, unlike that first system, and off it goes out into the abyss in the middle of October. So that's potentially another system there. Eastern Pacific systems, when we get to October, they're usually quite few and far between, but there's still plenty of time over there. And let's take a look at the Western Pacific again during this longer range. Those two systems still active, the first one dying off over the South China Sea near Hainan, the second one pretty clear-cut recurvature there and turning northeastwards and speeding off into the distance, and eventually becomes a powerful extratropical cyclone over the North Pacific. Once again, super long range, but take a look at this. You can't rule something like this out with storms like these, becoming a very powerful extratropical cyclone with hurricane force winds for a time, and then approaching the Pacific Northwest as a very powerful and large storm. Look at that. You can talk about all of this on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical and general weather chat, with over 3,700 members from all around the world. On this day, 20 years ago now, a Category 2 became a very powerful landfall for Nova Scotia, one of the most powerful actually. Hurricane Juan, which was retired later on as a result, became a very expensive storm for that region. We also had Tropical Storm Kate, which was starting to strengthen over there as well in the open Atlantic. Kopu, which was a Category 2 typhoon in the Western Pacific, about to move off east of Japan. And Tropical Depression 1S, which had just formed in the Southwest Indian Ocean, an early start, and did get the name Abaimba, I think it was, or Abaimba, as it moved gradually southwestwards. Here is the naming lists then. The next name now in the Atlantic is Sean. In the Eastern Pacific it's Lydia, and in the Central Pacific it's still Hone. 61 storms so far this year. Looking towards the western Pacific, we're still looking out for Koinu, and in the North Indian Ocean, at any point we could see Tej from one of these two systems, although I doubt they're going to get tropical storm status, or at least get there long enough for the IMD to name them, but who knows, I might be wrong, we'll see. And in the southern hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region is Jasper, southwest Indian Ocean, Alvaro, and the South Pacific's next name is Lola. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow.